Good afternoon and welcome to T-Mobile Champ Connections. We are live from the T5G range here at the Quail Hollow Club, and the guys are warming up for the PM wave of round 2 of the 107th PGA Championship. I'm host Keith Stewart, PGA professional, alongside Ryan Adams, a PGA coach, and we are going to take you through everyone's warm-up for this PM wave. We've got some superstars, highlighted, of course, by that mega group, that threesome at 1:47 p.m. of Rory McIlroy, #1 player in the world, Scottie Scheffler, and defending champion of the 2024 PGA Championship, Xander Schauffele. First thing we're going to do, though, every time you get to the range, I think it's really important that you figure out exactly what it is you're going to grab the golf balls and then take them out to the practice area. So we're going to head on over to the golf ball facility and see what the guys go through, and then straight to Luke Donald, our European, and head directly to European captain Luke Donald here, warming up for his afternoon tee time. He's going off the 10th hole. Yesterday, he was one of just European Ryder Cup captains in a round of the PGA Championship to shoot in the 60s. Just one of 5 guys. The last guy to do that was Jim Furyk in 2018. And it takes me back a couple years to think about that, Ryan. When you look at Luke Donald's swing and the 67 that he shot yesterday, remember back when he was #1 on the money list on the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour? What is it about Luke's swing that really absolutely fits this golf course today and the impeccable conditions that we have?
Sure. Yeah, the thing about Luke Donald's swing is we talked about this a lot yesterday, Keith, where the guys out here don't really swing outside of themselves, and Luke has been one of those guys since that time you talked about, that he's just had that repeatability with his irons. And we were watching him a little bit he had a couple alignment sticks down and just trying to get in the groove a little bit. But I think the thing to think about Luke Donald and what's made his career is his irons and his ball striking, and just being able to be consistent with those things. And that's a huge thing out here, is hitting greens, making sure you got birdie opportunities every single hole. And that's why Luke is one of the best players out here on the range, and probably why he shot so well yesterday too.
Well, there's no doubt about it. He's heading out with a blockbuster group of past PGA champions. He's got Patrick Harrington, and he's got Martin Keimer. Now, Luke, he's 47 years old. We know that this is a par 71 scorecard, going 7,600 yards, right? He's not obviously the longest player in the field. How would you, looking at Luke's game right now and where he's warming up, how would you approach such a long contest if you are Luke Donald?
Yeah, I think, it's a common theme that we talked about yesterday, but it's just not trying to go outside your comfort zone and stick to your strengths, right? Like, Luke has always been someone who relies on great ball striking, great iron play, good short game, good putting, and that's how he got probably near the top of the leaderboard yesterday, and I would assume he's going to do something of that kind today. So it's interesting that we talk about, distance and Luke, and I think he's probably thinking about, I'm not trying to overpower this golf course. That's not my game, right? Like, there might be guys to the left and right of me out here on this range that are driving it way past me. Don't really care. And I think that's a good tip for golfers back home, is when you're playing with other people and they might be hitting the ball farther than you or have a better part of their game, don't worry about it and just stick to what you do best. And that's how you shoot lower scores.
Well, he's pulling the driver out right now. And, Luke, when you take a nice casual glance here at what he's doing, I love that high finish that he has, right? The full follow through and the high finish. It's very characteristic of the way that he has swung the golf club his entire career, and he's had tons of success. I mentioned that earlier, right? How can the people at home, when they're watching this, what are the keys that allow him to get up to that finishing position? Because so many amateurs that would be watching this at home, on the T5G range here, how do they get to that spot?
No, for sure, definitely. And I think what you're seeing here too on the range is that he has a couple of alignment sticks lined up, and I think that the most important thing to think about when you're with that finish you're talking about, Keith, is you don't want to decelerate into impact, right? Like, a lot of the times when we run into trouble out on the golf course, we tend to go really fast off of the ball and then slow down and try to fix things at impact. What Luke does really nicely is he's very always been solid with the tempo, like very slow back and then kind of speeds up all the way through impact. And then it's almost like his arms are just being carried through the finish, and that's what allows that soft follow through. And I think that's what also helps him hit the ball so like close to pins, on greens. He's always got opportunities for birdies. So.
Well, right here, we're going to see this driver swing right now. And as he takes the club away, that coil, we mentioned this yesterday.
Yep.
No matter what age you are, if you need to try to hit the ball as far as you can, then you have to be able to turn your shoulders. And even at age 47, it looks like he's very pliable. There's a lot of mobility there, and he's really getting his back to the target with this long swing.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, we're going to probably move to Brooks Koepka here in a little bit, but if it's Luke Donald or Brooks Koepka, the key for anyone to get a little bit more power is just to make sure you have that chin underneath that lead shoulder. That indicates that your back is facing the target and you've got about as far as you can go back. So once you have that down for your backswing, if you're out playing this weekend or something like that, just think about getting your chin underneath your lead shoulder, and that should help with some power.
Three-time PGA champion Brooks Koepka now in front of us, 2018, 2019, 2023. Yesterday, just 5 fairways and 9 greens in regulation. When you look at his swing here, what is he trying to key on in order to hit more fairways and more greens today? Because finishing at +4 yesterday, that cut line, he's got to have a low one today.
Right. Yeah, I think Brooks has always been the type of guy who gets up for major championships, and I'm sure he's as frustrated as anyone coming off the course yesterday. So, he's got his coach here just trying to dial in probably something a little. He's a fader of the golf ball, left to right motion. And I think he's just probably trying to figure out how can I get a little less curve on this. So you might see a little bit more of a higher release to start that ball out a little further left, so he's not having a right miss. And maybe aiming a little bit further left as too, just to try and kind of compensate for maybe some of the inaccuracy of yesterday. So, but I have a feeling Brooks is going to come out and play today. So.
Well, you know what? He's in an inspiring group. They're going off at 1:03 p.m. He's with Ricky Fowler, who's, of course, won here before. You've got Shane Lowry is also in that group. They're all over par. They've all got to make a run at that cut line. It looks right now as if the top 70 in ties to make the weekend is going to be right around +2. Now, irons were always a key when Brooks was running through these PGA Championships and US Opens, when he was winning them back in the late teens, right? When you watch him here, right, and you think of Brooks Koepka's golf swing, you're like, what is one of the keys that someone that is watching from home from the T5G range here, brought to us by T-Mobile, what is exactly something that catches your PGA coaching eyes that you could say, all right, well, if you were giving a quick tip of the day in the professional shop at home, what would you mention about Brooks Koepka's iron game? Because he's got to hit more greens in regulation today.
Yeah, well, we'll get to the iron game, but I want everyone to kind of watch what we're seeing here. So the last shot that Brooks hit, he kind of looked like he had a little bit of a scowl and was upset with where the ball went. He's taking a break now. He's having a sip of water. It's pretty hot and humid out here today at Quail Hollow. And that's something you have to think about when you're out on the range, is if you're hitting the ball left and right and not sure really where it's going, just go back to your bag and just take a couple deep breaths. I mean, you're seeing it right here with Brooks. He's just trying to figure out a way to just reset, and I got to make the cut today, so what am I going to do to make that work?
Well, if there's somebody who has a championship mindset, it's definitely Brooks Koepka. And, when I think about him and winning there at Oak Hill, he definitely could handle the challenge of those demands, hitting fairways amongst that long rough up there in Rochester, New York, obviously hitting a ton of greens in regulation. This is going to be a tough test this afternoon. These guys going out there, they've got to get through that green mile. We've already seen it this morning. The 18th hole, the scoring average is higher than all 3 of the par 5s in the AM wave. And there's no doubt that he knows that, and he knows he's got to put up a good number there. Only 11 players yesterday in round 1 finished under par at the green mile. So, Brooks, he's got to get dialed in. And now we're about to head over to Justin Hicks, PGA professional, one of the Corebridge Financial team of 20. What do you love here about Justin Hicks's game?
Yeah, no, I think, we're just getting to him right now. He's just about to hit maybe a couple woods here before he goes out and plays. But take a look at what he's got on the ground, folks. It's something common that we've seen across the range today, is an alignment stick. And you may be thinking, why does he have an alignment stick down? Well, look where the alignment stick is aimed. It's aimed straight at its target. So if you're looking to maybe find something at home that you can help you with your alignment, an alignment stick is a great way to do that. You set it down, you aim it at your target, Is it good? Is it good? And then you go up and hit the ball. And you can kind of get dialed in that way with your alignment. So no surprise, Justin's a PGA of America golf professional. He's got the tools that he needs to hit it pretty straight here. So.
This is his first appearance in the PGA Professional Championship, Club Professional down in Boca Raton, Florida. If this was your first appearance, or you were coaching, Justin, right? How would you approach, getting out on the range amongst these guys that are major champions? Do you stick to your routine? Are you looking around? What do you admire about the fact that he's out here contending with the best in the world? What could you pick up?
Yeah, I think when it comes to uncomfortable situations, which for a first-time person at a major championship, you want to make sure that you have everything dialed in. You want to have the right clothes on, you got your sunscreen on, you got plenty of water, you got the people around you that you need to succeed. And I think he's talking with his caddy or some family and friends here, just trying to stay relaxed. He's on the range next to a bunch of the world's best golfers. So I think the more you can feel relaxed and comfortable, and if that means whether it's a routine for you, or if it's I'm going to get to the range this far in advance, maybe it's going to the putting green first or chipping, but whatever you do, don't try something new before a big round, right? If you're doing that, then you're starting to get a little bit out of your routine, and it's great to see Justin out here on the range.
Being a PGA professional from Florida, from Boca Raton, he will be used to the conditions today. All of that rain that we've seen earlier in the week, it's coming out of the ground now. It is Carolina warm this afternoon. It's going to get really warm at the end of the day as these guys approach the cut line. But as he's about to hit a golf shot now, I guarantee as a PGA professional, his fundamentals are going to match that of the guys that we saw yesterday, and more of whom we're going to see today. Even we just saw Brooks Koepka and Luke Donald. You look at his stance over the ball and now his takeaway, right? Is there anything about his takeaway and his backswing that anyone at home could pick up that you see as a PGA coach?
Yeah, I think, when I see Justin's swing, and this is one of the first times I'm seeing it, I think what I see is a lot of repeatability, consistency. He knows, we talked about this yesterday with Adam Scott, is like just good, proper fundamentals. You can see he's got very well balanced at address, takes a couple waggles, trying to really get that takeaway feel. And then you can see at the top here, pretty good turn and a really nice finish. See how I want to show that finish there. He had the club head or the shaft all the way around his neck, and that indicates a full finish. So for those of you at home struggling with your finish, just remember to do that.
Speaking of a championship finish, last week, Sepp Straka, who we're looking at right now, you can look at his rotation through the golf ball. He was absolutely striking the heck out of that golf ball on that classic golf course, the Wissahickon up at Philadelphia Cricket Club up there in Pennsylvania, and now he takes that down here to Quail Hollow Club. When I think of Sepp Straka, I think of somebody who absolutely hits lasers with his irons, and as he's hitting some shots here from the face on or the caddy view, right, is there anything about the motion of his body? Oh, we're going down the line now. Is there anything about the motion of his body? Sepp's a big player, right? Some of the people that are watching this are probably wondering how he's able to move so well. Is there anything that you see that he does that allows him to move through so well?
Yeah, I think when it comes to Sepp's swing, it's a lot of simple movements, right? It's I'm taking the club back on a nice line. We talked about this yesterday too with some of the takeaways where you keep that club head outside of your hands and not whipping it inside. And you can see here what he's doing is just trying to get those feels back, taking probably a little bit of a three-quarter swing, a little bit of wraparound finish there, but maybe he didn't like that one. But it goes to show that all of these guys out here have great fundamentals, and I can't stress that enough as a PGA coach. When you get your fundamentals dialed in, that's the key to good golf. And you can see here Sepp, I've always appreciated Sepp's balance in his swing. There's no rush to his swing. He's a big guy, so he doesn't really need to, swing too hard at it. He has the distance to do it. But I've always loved, and you can see the grip here and then down the line. Yeah, so everything that you have is great fundamentals, and I think that's why you saw Sepp in the winner's circle last week, and you might see him contend here this week.
Well, he's got 2 wins already this year on tour. He was there in Rome. He was a 2023 Ryder Cupper for the European side. Of course, you and I like the U.S. side, but you got to admire his consistency since being put on Luke Donald's swing, our team who we saw him earlier, right? Now, again, folks, if you're not down here with us in Carolina, well, one, you should get down to the 107th PGA Championship because the atmosphere here is electric, but it is warm, it is humid, it has been raining all week, and now it's beautiful out for these competitive rounds. And these guys, you can see Sepp continues to clean himself off because, you know, these guys are sweating. It's warm out here on the range, and he's pacing himself through each step in order to hit the ball. Now, we've got Sepp hitting just one or two more drivers. Oh, we've moved. You know what? I got to bring up an interesting point about this whole show that we're doing today here, Ryan. It's unbelievable how quickly we can move from golfer to golfer, and that is all provided by our friends at T-Mobile with the T5G range. You know, these are all wireless cameras. These guys are moving from player to player. They're even quicker than you and I are. It's amazing. Right. So they're jumping from guy to guy to show you as many people warming up as we can. The technology is unbelievable. I mean, just the technology out in the range with the picker, Karachi, that is working on the same T5G network, and you see him out there in magenta from time to time. It's almost like he's cleaning the carpet out there,
right.
Like, you know, like one of those mechanical vacuums at home. It's unbelievable. So now we're going to go over to our friend Rickie Fowler. Rickie Fowler, who's going out with Brooks and Shane Lowry in that 1:03 p.m. tee time. Fowler, he is definitely somebody who's experienced at this golf course. You know, he won here in 2012. He's got 5 top 10s at this golf course in all the times that he's played it. And in 2017, specifically in the PGA, he was T5. Yesterday, though, lost a couple strokes with the irons. As we watch him hit a couple of shots right now, what would you be keying on in order to hit better shots with your approach game today?
Yeah, right. So I think here at the T5G range, you can see we have a lot of technology, and Rickie's using a little bit of that right now with the launch monitor next to him. And he's just probably trying to dial in his wedge distances today. How far are my wedges going, and what distances do I need when I go out on the golf course? So this is a good way to start your practice routine on the range. I think honestly is just trying to hit a couple 3/4 shots. You know, where is this ball going? How did that feel? Do I need to maybe start a little bit longer of a backswing, maybe a little bit longer of a finish? And then just trying to look at the number and say, okay, that went this amount of yards. What is that going to do for me on the golf course? Am I going to be able to use this on the 3rd hole or the 6th hole or whatever, right? And he probably has. I imagine he's done the prep work as all these guys have. And he knows, well, that shot just went that far, and that's the shot I'm going to use on this hole when I'm in this situation. I mean, these guys are that dialed in, people. And I mean, I think anything you can do to learn at home and copy that's what you can do.
What's interesting about what we're seeing right now here with Rickie is that, and this is, you know, kind of a broader concept that I want to touch on with you, Ryan, as a PGA coach, is that I mentioned it in the opening on Rickie, right? He's got a lot of positive experience here. It looks to me like he's almost deliberately hitting shots that he would have coming up this afternoon out on the golf course, right? Is that something that you try to tell your students, you know, back at your home club, in order that, you know, when you are practice situational shots, don't just swing and hit balls on the range?
Yeah. And that is especially true when you're about to go out for a round, right? And you know, you see Rickie here, he's been kind of working on tempo with his wedges, and I think, you know, when it comes down to it and you're about to go play a round, whether that's this weekend, next week, or whenever, when you're out on the range right before the round, having a good tempo is probably one of the most important things, because if you're starting to rush a little bit, or you're going too slow, or you're getting a little bit out of sorts, that's when things can get into a little bit of trouble out on the golf course, and you don't want to have that. So I think what we're seeing now with Rickie is he's just trying to work his way up the bag, a little bit longer swings, but always keeping that nice, smooth tempo, which is critical for good shots.
Well, he's going to need that if he wants to match that finish from 2017 in the PGA Championship, where he finished 5th, because the conditions are going to head in that direction, and you've got to be very dialed in with where your low point is in your golf swing. And what I mean by that is that you can see as he makes each strike here with his iron, right, he's really compressing the golf ball, and he's got a little bit of shaft lean as he comes into the ball, and then obviously goes through to a full finish.
Right.
So many players and amateurs that we see aren't able to get that handle ahead of the head. It's just as we see here with Rickie right now. Is there something specific that you see in the downswing that he's doing in order to actually get the handle ahead of the ball at impact, and then make a strike where he hits the white ball before he hits the big green ball, meaning the earth?
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. To avoid those mishits, one thing that you can see in Rickie's swing is that when he comes down through the ball, he actually tries to get all the way through the ball, and you can see, we'll watch here, his front left heel, all his weight, or maybe 75% of his weight, is on that front left heel. he's not up on his toes. He's not, leaning back. He's just trying to make sure that he always is getting that weight through so that he can, like you said, Keith, drag the handle through and be square at impact versus hanging back. And you might, like you said, hit the big green earth before the little white ball, or come up a little bit out of it and pin it. So I think if you're at home and watching this, take a look at Ricky's swing here and look at that left heel and try to mimic that when you head to the range too.
All right. He's sitting at +2 right now. I'm going to put you on the spot, Ryan. Ricky, this afternoon, do you think he makes the cut? Based upon what you're seeing right here, he looks very comfortable. He looks smooth out here in the warm Carolina weather. Or do you think maybe he shoots a little over par and he doesn't see the weekend? What do you think?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I'm a fan of Ricky Fowler's. I think a lot of people are. He's a PGA Junior League ambassador, so we love that. I think he makes the cut, Keith. I think, I don't think the cut's going to move too much today. And I think Ricky loves this golf course, so we were talking about Brooks earlier, how he gets up for the major championships. I think Ricky is in that same ilk, and he's looking to play the weekend. So count me in for a made cut for Ricky Fowler.
So now we're heading over to another past champion of the PGA Championship, and that is Phil Mickelson. And, it's interesting. You talk about longevity in the game of golf. Phil Mickelson won his first PGA Championship back in 2005 and his second one in 2021, right? More than 15 years apart, And for somebody who has absolutely, he was top 25, top 50 in the world for like 3 decades. When you look at Phil's swing, what makes him so consistent to have played that well for that long?
Right. Again, I'm going to go back to the fundamentals here, and I'm going to go back to making things easy for yourself to get better. We just saw there that Phil has not only 1 alignment stick down, but 2 alignment sticks. And so I'll explain that a little bit. The first alignment stick closer to his feet is more for alignment. The second one closer to the ball is to help him hit the ball more square. So you see him roll the ball up right next to that second alignment stick. And I think what that does is it helps you try to center yourself a little bit and find the club face a little bit more square at impact versus, and he's got his backswing and the routes that he takes. He knows those very well, but today he's just trying to find out how can I get the ball going straight off the club face versus with a lot of curve. So that second alignment stick, I love that. If you're not comfortable with that, maybe just start with 1. But if you're starting to get a little more dialed in, I think that second alignment stick could really help you with club face control.
One of the things I've always admired about Phil's swing, and I think why it has stood the test of time, is that he's always had a little length to his swing. A lot of these younger players, and for those of you watching at home, provided by T-Mobile, our champ connections here on the T5G range, you're probably thinking to yourself, you see a lot of these young bucks out there on the range, always with a very short swing, and when they do go after the golf ball, their backswing is, very abbreviated. And Phil has been one of those guys, like a Luke Donald, who's still out here playing well, who has a much longer swing. How do you feel about the length of a backswing? We talk a lot about swing your swing, but when you see the length of Phil's backswing, what do you think about that? Do you think that adds to his longevity?
Yeah, I think, we talk a lot about, swinging your swing out here and not trying to do anything too fancy or too different before a big major championship like the PGA Championship. For you, that might be, a member guest or a tournament you're playing in, or even just a local Saturday game with your buddies. And I think, when it comes to the length of the backswing, it doesn't matter so much as do I normally take this long of a backswing, or am I just trying to take it longer because I've heard that Phil Mickelson takes it longer on his backswing and I can get more distance and do it for a longer period of time, just like Phil. I think, it's a balance that I love to talk about here. Is when we're watching the best players in the world, there are things that we can copy and there are things that we should just watch and admire. And I think his backswing length could maybe help you a little bit as far as hitting the ball further, but I think if you're trying to take it too far, then that's when you can run into issues on the downswing. So just do what you do best, and we talked about this a little bit earlier with the chin under the lead shoulder. If you get that done, that's all you really need for the backswing. But I've always loved Phil's swing, and it's done him a lot of good through his career.
Phil this afternoon at 1:14 p.m., his threesome. Listen to this one, right? You got Phil Mickelson, Tommy Fleetwood, and Jason Day. Also a PGA champion back in 2015. He was +2 yesterday. We're overlooking at Jason Day. He's also won on the property here on the PGA Tour. Great experience here. The last time he was on the property back in 2024 when he played here on the PGA Tour signature event, he finishes T4. Jason Day is a great fit for this golf course. I expect Jason to be very good today. Yesterday, he was middle of the pack. What do you see in his warm-up here that you think he's going to have to accentuate in order to try and hit more than half of his greens like he did yesterday?
Right, yeah. So you can see here, he's just working on his takeaway a little bit and trying to get the club head set in a good position at the top. Very slow, very rhythmic. He's still probably a little bit in the beginnings of his range session. I'm just trying to figure out, like, what do I need to do today to not only play the weekend, but rise up the leaderboard a little bit, because I do like this place. It's a familiar venue for me. I've played here a little bit, and trying to just figure out, what can I do with my golf swing out here on the range to get it in a good position so that it thrives under pressure out on the course. Because if you're on the cut line, you're probably feeling a little bit of pressure today. So it's just trying to, what can I do right now in this moment? And that's a good tip for those at home, is what can I do right now in this moment to make sure that I play my best out on the golf course? And he's doing that very well.
Well, we've all watched Jason Day for a couple decades since he stormed onto the scene back in the early 2000s. And as you see there in his pre-shot routine, when you're familiar with Jason, you know that he closes his eyes, he visualizes the shot, right? And then he goes through it. That process, that standing behind and looking, when you play golf, right? How do you go through a pre-shot routine and then kind of visualize the shot? What are the positive thoughts that you try to bring to mind? Do you do something like what Jason does? Do you something different? Walk me through how you do that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and Jason's always, I admire Jason for his pre-shot routine. He's maybe gotten some flack for it, but you know what? He's out here on the range at the PGA Championship, and we're watching from the sidelines, so he must be doing something right. But when it comes to practice routine, I think it's unique to each golfer, right? For me, I take a few practice swings right next to the golf ball. I go behind the golf ball. I visualize the golf shot, and then hopefully I'm hitting that shot that I just visualized. So I think when it comes to mental game and pre-shot routine, you can really combine those two things, and that's what Jason Day does really well. He slows down. He doesn't like speed into the shot either. He kind of saunters over to the ball and is like, okay, here we go, here we go, here we go. And now I'm going to hit the shot I just visualized for the last 5-10 seconds. And I really appreciate that with Jason.
Well, as we jump from golfer to golfer, thanks to all this wonderful technology from T-Mobile in here on the T5G range, the next guy up is Bud Cauley. And as we make our way over there, one of the things that I want to bring up about Bud is that his instructor, his PGA coach, is the 2025 PGA Coach of the Year, Jason Bale, down there at Jupiter Hills Club, the director of instruction there. And, taught by absolutely legendary guy there in Jason. There's obviously some fundamentals that makes Bud such a good ball striker, and now recovering from those years of injury, right? Bud has burst back on the scene. He's had a bunch of top 10s, top 5 finishes this year. What makes Bud such a good ball striker for the folks at home when they're watching his swing?
Yeah, going from one good Jason to another good Jason here, and Jason Bale and the PGA Teacher and Coach of the Year. But I think, when it comes to Bud Cauley, and maybe some golfers at home have kind of gone through something similar as Bud with some injuries, or if you're battling something that, has affected your golf swing, I think, it's just important not to rush the process. You don't want to go back out on the range too early and get hurt and try something different. So I think what you've seen from Bud is taking this meticulous process to get back to where he probably thought he should be a couple years ago, and I feel like Jason has probably been a huge part of that down in South Florida. And so I think for Bud, I think this week it's just, here I am. I'm finally injury free. I got no problems with any ailments, and I'm just going to go swing my swing. And I think Jason probably approaches that really nicely with Bud, and knows his past and knows not to push it too hard with him on the range, but trying to just focus on we're here now, and we got through maybe the low point, and we're going to try to do our best here at the PGA Championship. So
it's so important, and I'm so happy he's got the driver out here, because we haven't seen very many driver swings yet here this afternoon at T-Mobile Champ Connections on the T5G range, all covered in magenta. You got to love this thing. Even Karachi running around out there, scooping up all the golf balls, working off of all of this technology is really cool. I love the width of this stance. I love how he takes the golf club away. I think this is a big part of what makes Bud such a great, solid ball striker. I mean, the full finish, you see it all there, but just his setup alone with the driver, what catches your eye?
Yeah, the stance isn't too wide and it's not too narrow. So I think when you're thinking about driver and how far do I stand. Is a wider stance? Yes, but it's not too wide of a stance. It's kind of maybe a little bit past shoulder length, or your left and right shoulders. So think about that. But also, we go back to this a lot. Swing your swing. This setup, you can see Bud a little bit wider than shoulder width, and I think it's important to remember that that's what works for him, and I think that's a fundamental that'll work for a lot of people too. So thinking about it with the driver, a little bit past shoulder width for your setup there.
Everybody out here watching wants more power, Ryan, right? There's no doubt about it. They come to the lesson tee for one of two reasons. Keith, I want to hit it further, or Keith, I want to hit it more solid.
Right.
Well, those are kind of interconnected, right? As we watch Bud here with Jason Bale, you know what? Jason Bale, this guy's having a moment. He's not only the coach of the year for the PGA of America nationally, but he also is coaching Ryan Gerard, which was one of our guys that was the North Carolina native that climbed up the leaderboard yesterday, shot 5 under, 66 on this golf course. It was almost one of the first round leaders. But to get back to Bud and talking about that stance, how do you see him use the ground to gain power? Because he's not as tall as a Brooks Koepka, right? He's not as big as a Sepp Straka, but yet he's moving the ball out there on this T5G range, right? What do you see in the lower body that's going on that people can learn from to hit the ball just a little further?
Yeah, for sure. No, I love bringing, anytime we can give more distance and power to golfers, I'm always about that. So the thing that I love about Bud's swing is that he, like you said, he uses the ground, he does a nice full turn, he doesn't try to get up on his toes to get too much distance, but what he also does is he kind of rips that lower body through once he reaches the top of the backswing. So a feeling that you have at home, folks, is maybe when you're working on this, is try to feel like someone is yanking the left side of your belt, and try to feel that motion where your left hip is kind of now opening up and you're squaring the ball up with your upper body, right? If your hips are going at the ball, that's probably actually where your ball is going to go, out to the right. So feel, once you hit the top of your backswing, feel like I'm ripping my lower body through, I'm ripping my hips to the left, or to the right, I guess, if you're a lefty. And then that's how you can square the ball up nicely, like Bud Cauley does out here on the T5G range.
You bring a good point up there about lower body, right? So many times people, they leave the ball out to the right, or if you're a lefty, out to the left, because they haven't really completed their swing. It has a big part to do with the middle of their body. Not everybody wears a belt and a belt buckle, but everybody has a belly button, right? Are you getting that to point to your target and even beyond it as you rotate through the ball? And you can see that he does that beautifully there. And that's a big part. You cannot ever underestimate how important it is to finish off the golf swing, because if you're coming into the ball and you're slowing down your turn, then and all you do is you get to, you get that belly button just barely past the ball at impact, then you were slowing down coming into impact, right? We would love to accelerate that feeling through the impact zone. And as you watch Bud here down the line, you can really, really see how he does that. He pushes off that back foot. A bunch of times on the range, I would say to somebody, if you were going to throw something, right, you'd push off the back foot. Watch how Bud loads that back foot and then pushes off and then gets it off the ground. So many times people hit the driver flat foot. Do you have any good drills, Ryan, that you know of or that you've heard from other PGA coaches in order to use your feet better, especially when you're hitting the driver?
Yeah, I think actually it might seem counterintuitive, but actually if you stand with your feet together and narrow your stance, that actually is helpful to understand how you use the ground to generate more power, right? If your feet are together, you don't really have much width, so you can't really move too far out and left or out and right. You really have to use that ground to try and get through the ball and turn through it. So try that at home. If you're out on the range practicing a few things, take 5 or 6 golf balls, put your feet together. Maybe it's not with a driver, maybe it's like with a 7-iron or an 8-iron, and just feel that motion of using the ground. Your back right foot is when you're on the backswing, and then when you come through, front left foot. And you can see that with Bud Cauley. We saw that with Ricky Fowler. They use the ground extremely well to generate power. So Ryan Adams, PGA coach. I'm your host, Keith Stewart, also PGA professional. When we were looking at the pairing sheet for this afternoon, you and I, before we came live here, thanks to T-Mobile and Champ Connections on the T5G range, one of the names that I hoped we would get to see warm up today was no doubt Tommy Fleetwood. Yes.
Because the things that he does, it's almost like a drill that people could learn so much from. The abbreviated finish is the first thing that sticks out in everyone's mind. Ryan, as a PGA coach, how can people learn from that and this Fleetwood move right here that we see down the line?
Yeah, so Tommy's swing is, it just oozes with repeatability, right? So you see, him out on the practice range or out on the course, he always does the same thing. He chokes down on the club a little bit, and for those that maybe don't know what choking down on the club does, it adds a little bit of control to your golf swing. So if you're kind of seeking something, you're kind of maybe hitting some wayward misses, or you're trying to hit the ball a little straighter, just choke down a little bit on the grip, and that'll help with some control. But you can see here that Tommy's got an alignment stick set up straight on, and he's moving it a little bit right now, and that's a more advanced way of using an alignment tool, I'd say. If you're someone who has never used an alignment tool or an alignment aid, maybe you don't do this one, but it can really help with your backswing, right? Like, he's trying to focus on taking the club outside of that alignment aid on the backswing, and then down through it underneath it on the follow through, just so he can try and feel what impact look feels like, and what that square face feels like too.
Well, you know what, there's two things, very important things that I want to unpack with what you just talked about there. Number one, as a PSA, that alignment rod, the way that Fleetwood is using it there, folks, don't try this at home unless you're under the guise of a PGA
That's
professional, right?
Yep.
Like, don't just pull one of those out in your backyard and start swinging, because you don't want to snap that stick. You definitely want to take a lesson and understand why Fleetwood's using it. But probably the most important thing that everyone could learn from him as he's warming up here is that there's no extra motion in Tommy's swing, especially in the follow-through. That golf club, that grip is always under his control, because it's connected in his swing, in its sequence with his body, right? And there's so many people at home, amateurs, that when they swing the golf club, they come to their finish and the club's moving wildly, right? They can't stop it like Tommy does there. This would be a good drill for everyone to do at home, to hit like little half, three-quarter shots,
right,
where when you come through, can you actually stop the club from swinging? Now, Tommy's not stopping. He's accelerating through the ball, but because his chest and his back and his shoulders and his body and his pelvis are all moving with the shaft, he's able to do that. It's just an absolutely fantastic move we can all learn from. And when you think about Tommy Fleetwood, and you mentioned this earlier, right? And tell me about it more, Ryan, but like Tommy Fleetwood, he's not called Fairway Jesus for nothing, right? I mean, he is one of those guys that finds the fairway without a doubt.
That's right, yeah, and as we see him warming up here on the T5G range, yeah, he's always been someone that I think has had more accuracy, or a focus on accuracy. He doesn't hit it like short, but he hits it fairly long. But accuracy in finding the greens, you think about his fellow Ryder Cup Europe and probably his eventual captain, Luke Donald. They kind of have a little bit of a similar style to their game, where it's more focused on, they find the fairway, and then, okay, all systems go. We're trying to get close to the flag, and I got the right tools in my swing to do that. And, you can see as we move here a little bit over to Matthew Fitzpatrick, another Ryder Cup Europe player here at the PGA Championship. It feels like, the two of them have pretty repeatable swings, and they're actually pretty similar as well. Fitzpatrick is really into the data, and so he's probably got a launch monitor there to see what his numbers are today. But yeah, Fitzpatrick, Keith, I think, he's probably looking at, he's played well decently yesterday. He's probably looking at trying to climb the leaderboard a little bit today. And when it comes to trying to climb the leaderboard and shoot a lower score, he needs to focus on how can I hit the center of the club face each time. And if I can do that, probably going to put together another good round.
Fitzpatrick is one of those guys, you go back to when he won at the Country Club in the U.S. Open, he's gained some length over the last few years,
yes,
in order to try to compete with these other modern players, a lot of whom we've seen today already, like a Brooks Koepka, who's extremely long. Matt has gotten longer and longer throughout his career, and he's not gotten significantly taller and or bigger. I'm sure he's stronger than he was when he first came out. But when you look at Matt's swing, right, the languid nature of it, right, how does he produce power? What are you keying on with your eyes when you see that, or you hear or you read throughout the golf pundits, and they're saying, well, Matt's getting longer, yeah, he's saying it in the press room, right? But what do you see as a PGA coach that he does that we can repeat at home?
Yeah, well, I know that Matt's come by a lot of his distance through a little bit of speed training and trying to work on just swinging the golf club faster. But for the majority of people at home, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier about Fleetwood and then about Fitzpatrick, is you can swing however you want to swing, and if you find the center of the club face, that's how you get the most distance, and that's how you take advantage of your speed, and that's how you take advantage of your power, right? If you're hitting the ball off the toe or off the heel, or trying to figure out a way to work an inside move and then come back down on the outside, you got to make sure that you're centered and you're hitting the club face right square in the middle, and that's what gets the most distance, right? So I think you see here with Fitzpatrick, a lot of the guys here start out with shorter clubs with 3/4 swings or half swings like we saw with Tommy Fleetwood, and they're just trying to dial in that feeling of what does it feel like to hit the center of the club face, and I'm going to work my way up through the driver, and then that's when I can start adding the speed that I have with that club.
Now, there's been a common theme. Obviously, all of these guys are world-class players. They're here in the 107th PGA Championship, and I'm Keith Stewart, your host today, PGA professional, alongside PGA coach Ryan Adams on the T5G range, brought to us by T-Mobile. And you know, when I think about all of these guys, I look at their arm hang there, right? When we get that face-on caddy view, I know we're looking down the line right now, but as we bump back and forth from camera to camera, their arms form a V. And we saw it with Fleetwood, we've seen it with Brooks, we've saw it with Phil, we've saw it with Luke Donald, right? How do you try to teach people to get their arms to work together so they can give us this Fitzpatrick look?
Yeah, and he's there with his coach, PGA American Golf Professional PGA coach Mark Blackburn, and they probably tried to, you know, with that arm hang, it's all a matter of preference. It looks like he's a little bit closer with the handle to his legs than I am, but he's on the range and I'm on the sidelines with you, Keith, so you're probably doing something right. But I think, you know, when you stand to the ball and you think about, you know, what's a comfortable distance away from my lower body and my arm hang, and if that feels right to you, then that's the right one. You don't want to go too far away from the ball or too close to it too. So,
well, this 1:25 p.m. group this afternoon is a blockbuster group. I know it's not Rory and Scottie and everything, but when you're rolling out Jon Rahm, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Patrick Cantlay, boy, I tell you, they're not second to many groups right there. So now we're looking at Patrick Cantlay, who is also taught by a PGA of America Coach of the Year in Jamie Mulligan out there in Southern California at Virginia Country Club. But when you think of Patrick Cantlay, I think of Xander Schauffele. I think of guys that are like some of the most well-rounded players in the world, not just on the tour, but in the world, right? And as Patrick is starting to make some swings here, some full swings with what looks like to be one of his wedges, right? What strikes you about his move? I mean, he has what seems to me like effortless power.
Yeah, no, I would say the same thing, and we got a little bit of a closer up look here of his grip, which I really appreciate. And I think, you know, you can see it's a little bit stronger there, and I think, you know, that's not something that's necessarily a bad thing if you're thinking about that at home, or if maybe you have a little bit of a weaker grip. That's just Patrick's grip, right? And he's worked with Jamie, who's a, you know, world-class teacher, also teaches Nelly Korda. You know, Jamie probably looked at that grip and said, is that what you want to use for the rest of your career, Patrick? And if he said yes, then they just go forward with it, right? And it's a little bit stronger, so that's actually going to, you know, help him hit a little bit more of a draw at times. And you can see he's maybe trying to work on a little bit of a different grip there, but a little bit more neutral, which is okay. Maybe trying to get some feels down with the wedge, and maybe he tries to use that grip to do a little bit more of an open face shot with some of those wedges. But anytime you're thinking about grip, it's the most important thing because it's the only thing connected to the golf club, right? So make sure it's natural to you and nobody else.
Now, all of this is brought to us by T-Mobile Wireless, right? So let's talk to our friends here with the cameras. Let's see if we can get that face-on view again and the picture of his grip, because you've unpacked a lot of information there, right? You talked about a neutral grip, you talked about a strong grip. When we look right here at when Patrick puts his hands on the golf club, I see a lot of the glove kind of sticks out in my mind.
Yep.
And the logo of the glove. You know, what do you mean by strong? What do you mean by neutral? You know, kind of break that down for the people watching at home.
Yeah, so you can see a little bit of the glove logo there. Strong necessarily means that you're turning your hand a little bit more left when you're showing more knuckles, so that actually helps you take the club back a little bit more on the inside if you're trying to hit maybe a draw. If you struggle with a slice, a stronger grip can help you up top at the top of your backswing with a little bit more of an open face, and, you know, try to figure out, like, is this working for me for a draw? And, you know, I wouldn't necessarily say, you know, if you're going out to play tomorrow to change your grip, but, you know, these guys are so good that they can adjust a little bit here and there. But strong grip usually means more of a draw. Weak grip usually more of a fade. Neutrals kind of, you can go back and forth. So a lot of the guys out here you'll see they have pretty neutral grips. Some have stronger grips if they're trying to get a little bit more power. But yeah, I think Patrick, you know, like we said, it's his grip and it's unique to him, and I think it's worked pretty well. So.
Well, what I love about Patrick's golf swing is that he's one of these broad back players that really, really winds himself up. And that's to me where the effortless power comes from. So as we're watching this, either down the line or from the caddy view, I want you to watch his lead shoulder, his left shoulder, get tucked under his chin and get his spine to the target. At this point, he's starting to really warm up in his routine in order to get ready to go out and play with Jon Rahm and Matt Fitzpatrick. And I don't think enough people at home, when they are warming up, are really trying to stretch themselves and turn themselves. And you look at Patrick here, and that really sticks out in my mind that, Patrick's not a small guy. He's got broad shoulders. He's got a lot of musculature in that back, and he's turning it and he's winding it up so that he can unload it, and that's where that effortless power comes from.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think, you're seeing, again, a common theme here on the range, which I love because that means that the best players in the world are all doing it. He has, when he turns through the ball, he's got that weight. Again, where is it? It's on the front left heel. And I think that that's important. But what you're saying, Keith, is great too, where you're talking about how do I get more power out of the ball? And you can see here as we move over to Davis Thompson, he's got the same sort of feels, right? Is we're trying to, feel when I get my back to the ball, what does this feel like? And is it too far? Is it not long enough? And that's where a PGA coach, everyone can help you a little bit, try to determine what's best for you. But it's everyone's got a different swing, and we'll see if Patrick can get going today.
Ryan, the camera angle, a very similar body type, but there's a lot of Davises out here. Starts with North Carolina Davis Love III, but it's not Davis Thompson. We've got Cam Davis there, right? And Cam Davis was one of those guys that yesterday had a spectacular round, and as he sits here and he talks things over with his coach, I can't wait to see what it is that he looks to prepare in order to do. When I think of Cam Davis, I think of an ultimate ball striker, right? This is the perfect place to watch Cam Davis work, right? If he ever doesn't reach his potential, it's usually on the putting green. So we're not at the practice putting green right now. We are out here on the T5G range, brought to us by T-Mobile Wireless. And as we watch him hit a couple of shots here, he seems like they're deep in conversation here for a second. But just as he's standing there swinging the club, I watch his left hand there, right? You see the motion of his left hand there and the rolling over of the wrist, right? So many players hold on to that golf club for dear life, and they don't ever let the golf club rotate and go. Now, the Cam today, he has 74 earlier this morning, so this is a post-round session with his coach, and I think that's why they're doing a lot of deliberation here. But when you think about it and you watch what his hand was doing there before he goes to hit some shots, right? When you saw what his hand was doing, do you have some drills that you try to use with your students as a PGA coach in order to get them to get that lead arm in order to kind of roll over and rotate?
Yeah, well, first off, apologies to Cam Davis over here. Hopefully no one shows him the stream. But I think the most important thing, when you come off the course and maybe you didn't have the best score today, is that you don't get too technical. So if his coach is probably talking through like, hey, what did we do right today? Like, or what did we do that was really good today? And you don't want to focus on the negatives because he's still got 2 rounds left to play today, Saturday and Sunday. So he's probably trying to get right back to where I was yesterday, right? And I think, as far as drills go, maybe drills, it's not the time for drills today because the fields aren't far away because he played so well yesterday. But, him and his coach are probably trying to just figure out, like, what did we do wrong? What can we do right and get better tomorrow?
Social media superstar now for you, Ryan Adams. All right, Michael Kim is here. And, Michael Kim hit superstar status, not back when he won the John Deere a couple years ago, but earlier this year, from the time of the WM Phoenix Open to the Masters, he dropped his world ranking, well over 100 points in order to get in the top 50 in the official world golf ranking and get to the Masters. And everybody was cheering for him because everybody loves him out there on Twitter and in social media and the way he embraces everyone. So here's the thing. How does he do it? how did he go on that run? You know, he's known as an impeccable long iron player, which would be a good fit for this place. 3 par 3s over 200 yards. Like, what do you see in his golf swing? I mean, I look at that V, I look at the footwork and everything and the balance, but what sticks out in your mind when you start thinking about Michael Kim on the range?
Yeah, I think, you know, this year Michael has always been a solid player, but this year he's really kind of put everything together, right? And so as we look at his swing here from a little bit down the line, you can see he's working on the takeaway, right? And the takeaway for the golfers at home is what sets your swing in motion. And so we got to remember that the takeaway is maybe the most important part of the backswing, right? And if you can get set up on a good takeaway, like Michael Kim, you were saying, Keith, is a great, impeccable long iron player. He doesn't hit those long irons straight and true without a good takeaway. So I think, you know, if you think about, you know, some drills or maybe some moves to work at home, just try a little bit of a takeaway motion and see, make sure you got the right motion before going to the top of the backswing.
Now, before we run away today from T-Mobile Champ Connections live from the T5G range, again, I'm with Ryan Adams, PGA coach. I'm your host, PGA professional Keith Stewart. I can't get away from the fact that this is the second major championship of the year, right? The 107th PGA Championship. This morning, the guys are out on the golf course. It's starting to dry up. It's starting to get firm. That cut line, the green mile, all of these things are waiting for these guys. The flags right now, they don't seem to be blowing like they were yesterday afternoon. Let's talk a little bit about the cut. Let's talk about the cut line for a second, right? One of the things that's unique to the PGA Championship, you get the top 70 in ties, right? Now, as you were warming up today here on the range, are you thinking about the cut line, like, or are you thinking about, you know, how you're just going to play shot after shot? Like, when do you start looking at leaderboards? Are you asking your caddy where you stand? Because that's a big part of the conversation here. Is getting to the weekend, you can let a little air out of the balloon, and then maybe you can attack from there. It's a major championship, and scoring has been difficult. Yeah, no, I think, you know, if you're wherever you're at on the leaderboard, I think you're just trying to do what you were trying to do yesterday, right? And play the best play to the best of your ability. And the most important thing, you know, if you're near the top or if you're on the cut line or wherever you're at, is just to do, like you said, Keith, one shot at a time. And you know, I can imagine golfers have heard that so many times, but it cannot be more truthful, because if you're focusing on, well, the cut line has just moved to this number and I'm at this number, how am I going to make this many birdies to get back up under the cut line? Well, you do that by one shot at a time. First the drive, and then I'm in the fairway, then I'm hitting the green, and then I'm hitting the putt, and I'm hopefully making a birdie to get closer to the cut line or go up the leaderboard. So, you know, you probably don't like that I say this, but folks, one shot at a time when you're out there on the course this weekend. Well, you know what? We're watching these guys one shot at a time, and we've seen both of his playing partners so far, and this is the 1:25 p.m. group this afternoon. That was Matt Fitzpatrick, it was Patrick Cantlay, and of course the other guy is Jon Rahm. And we are going to get to Jon Rahm in just a second. He's coming on the range, and our wireless cameras brought to us by T-Mobile. I mean, it's unbelievable, the technology here, how we can just bounce from player to player here in unbelievable resolution. But we are looking at Rahm, and when I saw Rahm playing yesterday, Ryan, I saw a guy, right, that is a top 10 machine over there on Live Golf. The type of Jon Rahm that we didn't see last year in major championships, but we want to see this year in major championships. Jon Rahm, the first thing that sticks out in everyone's mind when you watch him, right, it's the abbreviated backswing, right? What is it about Jon Rahm's backswing that is a good fundamental key that we can translate out to our audience right now? Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, one thing you just saw there a couple of shots ago was Jon Rahm cleaning his grooves out of it on his wedge. Make sure you do that before you take any more swings. You don't want to go with dirty grooves into the ball. So yeah, for his backswing, you know, again, we go back to the fact that each of these guys has a unique swing, and Jon's might be a little bit shorter, but man, he produces so much power with that swing. So the most important part, you know, when you're watching, I said this before earlier when we were watching someone else, is you can watch these guys and admire them from afar, but there's also some things, you know, that you shouldn't try, and you should remember, well, Jon's swing is a little bit shorter, but he's also, what is he doing? He's taking a full turn, right? And so that's what you have to remember is, I'm seeing this swing that's a little bit shorter, but he's also taking a full turn, and that's what my coach says to do, so I'm going to do that. You know, there's a unique thing and this is another quick PSA from one PGA coach to another. So from me to you, when you watch Jon Rahm's golf swing, okay, you look at his wrist angles, and they're bowed like when we were talking yesterday about Dustin Johnson, right? You see that lead wrist kind of bowed at the top, meaning that, you know, if you're wearing a watch or whatever past your watch, right, the hand kind of goes internal towards the center of your body, and it does not go external, right? So when it turns in like that and it bows, when you have a shorter backswing like that, if you struggle with a shorter backswing, try to copy Jon Rahm's wrist angles or try to copy Dustin Johnson's wrist angles. It will supremely help you. And that's why Jon Rahm is such a good iron player, and that's why he sits at -1 yesterday. He got around this golf course in a very efficient manner, and, you know, as of right now, he's 8 shots behind the leader, Johnny Vegas. So Johnny Vegas has increased his lead. He's 2 under par today through 13 holes. And we've got Jon Rahm, who's got to hunt him down. He's 8 shots behind, but he's got 3 rounds to play. Johnny Vegas does not, right? As you look at Jon Rahm and you start to think about what he's doing and how he's preparing, right? Forget the 1 shot at a time thing, right? We need to go out and make some birdies, right?
Right.
What is it that you admire about Jon Rahm's game or what he does here physically that allows him to attack pins? Because you know Kerry Haigh is going to have this golf course set up for some fun this afternoon.
Well, I think, you know, Jon is a longer hitter, so he's probably going to have a few more shorter clubs into greens than most players are. And you can see here, you know, with during his warm-up, is that he's working on trying to make sure that the wedges are doing what they're supposed to do, and that's to go straight, and that's to go very close to the hole. So he's got an alignment stick there just outside of his golf ball, and he's using that to kind of guide his takeaway. And I think what's most important about, you know, thinking about wedges and trying to be a little bit more aggressive on the golf course is you want to make sure that, again, you're hitting the center of the club face, because if you're finding your way back to impact and you're chunking it or you're thinning it, you're not going to be able to get the ball close to the hole. You get too inconsistent, right? And the key with wedges is to be a little bit more consistent. So that's why I like that Jon has an alignment stick here, is because he's just trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to take the club back along this alignment stick, and if I come through the right way, it's going straight and it's going near the flag, and that's how I can make a lot of birdies today and climb up the leaderboard a little bit.
You know, I like to compare him to somebody like a Sepp Straka, a very similar body type, right? And I love that both of them don't take their mass for granted, right? And I mean that as a compliment, is that they don't, just because they're bigger guys, they just swing easy. Like, they use it to their advantage. And one of the things that always struck me about Jon's swing, as we see there from the caddy view or from face on, is that you can really see him drive into that front side. Jon's a big, strong guy. He doesn't have to go after it that hard, but you know what? He does do it. And I think that that's something that we should all try to replicate at home. I think it's super important that as you watch Jon hit this shot, he loads up again, the big shoulder turn, and then from there you can see a decided move from the top of the backswing into that front foot and as a weight shift, right? So when you think about shifting your weight as you play golf, right? Ryan, as a coach, when you're working with players on the range at home, right? How do you try to communicate that message? Because weight shift is so important, because, I mean, we're seeing it in every single swing out here.
Right. So if I was to talk to someone about weight shift, what I'd have them do is pick up that alignment stick that Jon Rahm has, and I would have them put it across their shoulders. And then when they take the turn back, that alignment stick should be pointed a little bit maybe past the ball or at the ball. And then when they come through, the other side of the alignment stick should be pointed at the ball, right? Because that indicates that I turn my back all the way there, I'm at the ball, that's where I should be when I have the club in my hand. And then when I come through, I'm doing the exact opposite, and the alignment stick is pointed at the ball again. So that, if that was, you know, something you wanted to do at home, I think it would be a great drill for finding out how far you turn. And you might not be able to get all the way back to the ball, or maybe you turn too far and you're past to the ball. But an alignment stick has multitude of ways you can use it, and I think finding out how far you can turn is one of those things.
Now, Ryan, you and I have been PGA coaches for a while. You just got to love the setup of this range, right? You can see it right here in the shot. You've got that big scoreboard out there where they're using top tracer technology in order to show the launch monitor.
Got Koepka racing past there. The real MVP of the range.
But you couldn't do all of this without the T-Mobile wireless technology, right, on this T5G range. I mean, this isn't the Wi-Fi in your house or anything like that. This is T5G range technology. I mean, this stuff is above and beyond. These guys are walking back and forth from player to player, you know, just using these high resolution cameras, and we get to see Rahm, and we get to see Brooks, and we get to see Phil, one after another. So, you know, it's funny, I see that in the picture there, the magenta, and it catches my eye, and I think that how fortunate you and I are. I mean, growing up on a range, I mean, who wouldn't want all of this technology in front of him? Now, don't get me wrong, Jon Rahm's a top 5 player in the world, so he probably deserves it more than you and I, and he's showing us here right now. But boy, he does look good right there on this range. And I picked a lot of ranges in my day. I don't know about you, Ryan, but it sure would have been nice to have Karachi back in the day to just send out there remotely to do it, rather than getting in that picker myself. And obviously Jon Rahm wouldn't be hitting me, but Jon Rahm is one of those people that he tends to use his emotions to fuel his golf swing, to fuel his golf game. I mentioned Johnny Vegas right now. He's the leader. John's going to know when he tees off. Jon is one of those guys that gets fired up, and at the end of the day, you don't get to be like Jon was at one point, number 1 in the world, without being somebody who plays with a little bit of inspiration, right? Now, speaking of somebody who inspires all of us, but plays with a little bit of inspiration himself, right? The Texas Longhorn is coming on the range. The world's number 1, Mr. Scottie Scheffler. He is now getting out here. He is about to go through his routine. He's getting ready for that super group that's coming out, and they tee off at 1:47 p.m. Of course, that is Scottie Scheffler, number 1 in the world. We've got 2025 Masters champion Rory McIlroy, who's also won here on the property at Quail Hollow Club 4 times. And then the third guy, just, as a matter of fact, adding on the 2024 PGA champion Xander Schauffele. I mean, in this afternoon, these guys, now Scottie Scheffler, 2 under par, sits at a great spot. He was pretty good yesterday. Maybe the putter let him down a little bit, a couple maybe loose swings. We know he's going to tighten that up, but those other guys are going to be fighting that cut line, right? This featured pairing this afternoon is going to be absolutely electric, and it's going to be led by this guy right here who sits 7 back from the leader.
Right. Yeah, no, totally. And I think one of the things that I've always appreciated about Scottie is first that he uses his longtime PGA coach, Randy Smith, who's a legend in northern Texas, to the best of his abilities. And the thing that Randy and Scottie always start with, and this is a great thing that you should start with too, is how am I gripping the club? And Scottie, you'll see it today on the range, here at the T5G range and out on the golf course. He's always checking his grip. He's making sure that, am I good? Am I good? Is this what Randy and I have worked on all week? Or have I started to slide a little bit too strong? Have I started to slide a little bit too weak? So you can see here he's got the interlock grip. Just, is this the right thing? And he's like, yep, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and hit this wedge. And you see him check in on that, and I think that's a good thing for people to focus on at home, is like, if you start hitting a little wayward, check that grip, check that alignment, check those fundamentals, because that can get you back on track more than anything.
Number 1 player in the world. I'm so happy you talked about the grip real quick. I'm out on the tour covering it all the time. Signature events, major championships, and I've seen Scottie warm up a number of times. He carries a molded grip with him to practice with, right? This is the number 1 player in the world. He carries a training aid with him in order to practice just his grip. And you see how deliberate it is every time, whether he's on the range or whether he's on the golf course, making sure that those fingers, it's a big part of his pre-shot routine. You'll notice that this afternoon when you're watching the coverage, everyone. He every single swing, he absolutely checks his grip, gets those fingers on there so methodically. You can see him doing it right now, as he sets up for this shot down the line. He's got to get his hands on there properly. And, it's been a theme today. There are so many people that go to warm up on their range at home, and they don't ever use a training aid. We've seen half the players out here that we're looking at right now on this T5G range have either alignment rods out or something hanging around their neck between their arms, or Scottie has that grip that's in his bag that he used to train his grip for every single swing. Now, the one thing that comes up with Scottie all the time is the back foot. Right? Is this something that we're supposed to copy? As we watch him warm up here, that thing is footloose all the time, right? Like, should we be incorporating a little Kevin Bacon in our golf swing? What makes that work for him, Ryan? And should any of that translate to the people that are watching this live stream at home?
Yeah, I think, that's one thing that people will pick up on, here at Quail Hollow and here at the T5G range, or whenever you watch Scottie Scheffler swing, is that those feet slide a little bit. But one thing I always appreciate is that, and here comes Randy Smith, just to make sure everything's okay, which I love. Those two have a great... Go ahead.
PGA Professional of the Year Randy Smith,
That's
right?
right.
From Dallas, been with Scottie since he was a junior golfer, right? Could you imagine? Can you imagine if you had to go up against somebody like Scottie and Randy in PGA Junior League, right?
Yeah.
How much you just get killed all the time?
I would just shake his hand on the first hole.
Yeah,
Like, you won.
And I love that Randy is still with him almost more as a mentor than he is an instructor, a coach, a PGA coach, rather than someone that they're looking at the details and the bits and pieces, right? The fundamentals are laid out there. This is the #1 player in the world, right? Randy Smith jumps in there, and I love Randy Smith, just an incredible PGA instructor. I had to jump in there.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And, you know, like PGA of America golf professionals like Randy Smith, they're prepared for anything. So you saw Randy had the umbrella there, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did a little alignment aid with the umbrella on Scottie's shoulders here at some point. But, you know, I think going back to the feet, Keith, you're not really seeing the feet sliding around too much here with the wedges because he's not at a lot of speed at this point in his warm-up routine. But again, you know, think about a young Scottie Scheffler, and if Randy Smith saw, you know, Scottie's feet moving around a little bit, but he also saw that he's hitting it straight, and he's also hitting it pretty far, and it's also working for him really well. I'm not going to touch this. I'm going to let Scottie swing Scottie's swing, and I think, you know, for those at home, if you're thinking about, well, you know, my feet don't slide as much, or maybe I got this, well, stick with it. You know, if it's working for you, there's not much you need to change. Maybe working on the fundamentals a little bit, maybe the backswing, the takeaway, the turn, as we talked about. But yeah, the feet for Scottie have always been something that's unique, and I think, you know, whether it's a shuffle or the Scheffler shuffle or whatever you want to call it, you know, it's worked for him because he's won multiple times. He's won multiple majors, and I think that's the most important thing you can pick up from Scottie's swing is swing your swing and not somebody else's.
All right, Ryan, now we're having some fun out here on the T5G T-Mobile range, right? Because you got the Scheffler shuffler going on. That bested my Kevin Bacon, you know, anecdote. So let's stick with Scheffler for a moment. You know, if you can't have that back foot dance a little, right? And I'm not saying it needs to slide as much as Scottie's does, but if it can't, then you haven't completed your weight shift. And I think that's really the theme that people should take away from the #1 player in the world, is that when Scottie goes to swing, right, he 100% is into that front foot as soon as he transitions from the backswing to the downswing, right? And that's one of the things as we key on this down the line look right here, right? When he goes to the top of his swing and he goes forward, that foot is already dancing, right? It is starting to fly off the ground. And when they study these guys and they put them on force plates, they know that at impact, that roughly 90% of their weight is on their lead foot when they're striking the ball. Well, I got news for you. You know this, Ryan, as a PGA coach, but it just didn't get there at that moment. It is there as early as possible. And I love watching Scottie swing it because he commits to every swing and he just hammers that front foot with all of his weight. And, you know, Randy's probably taught him that since he was a little kid. And I can remember seeing Scottie win junior tournaments, right? And he had the Scheffler shuffle back then, right? He was footloose then. And again, he's doing it here today, and he's going to have to because 7 strokes behind. I know there's a bunch of rounds left, but he's in a big group with, you know, the defending champion Xander Schauffele. He's here with Rory McIlroy, who could be going for a Grand Slam this year. Scottie for sure is somebody that we're going to keep continuing to have our eye on. Now, okay, we're getting into a little bit more of a fuller iron swing. Randy just mentioned a couple of words of encouragement to him, maybe a couple of keys. And let's see with this swing here from the caddy view from face on, what Scottie gives us.
Yeah, no, it's a well-balanced, rhythmic, good swing. It's something I expect a lot of today from Scottie, to be honest. He's probably, you know, a little frustrated with how the round went yesterday and just trying to shoot a little bit lower score today. And he just, you know, Rory talked about this a little while ago from what I remember. Just there's a way that Scottie plays that just kind of, you pick apart a golf course. And so I think he's probably going to have that strategy today, but today right now at the range, at the T5G range, he's probably trying to dial in, you know, I can see the grip here. It's from the down the line view here. You can see here. Let's watch him on the backswing. Yeah, full turn, back facing the target. And I think that's the most important thing that you can remember, folks, is that taking that same swing and making that same full turn and that same full finish, whether you're on the range, whether you're on the golf course, you got to do it every time if you want to hit it straight and far.
Current Ryder Cupper, Scottie Scheffler. Junior Ryder Cupper, Scottie Scheffler. He probably learned from one of Randy Smith's other students, Justin Leonard. He was pretty good in the Ryder Cup. I don't know, 99.
Yeah. Pretty
good putt, 1 or 2 that I could kind of recall, right? Scottie Scheffler, when I'm watching him hit balls here and he's warming up, we talked about this earlier. We talked a little bit about Luke Donald, the length of their swing. Phil Mickelson, the length of his swing. And we've seen some shorter swings, back swings, and follow-throughs. The abbreviated version of like Tommy Fleetwood. When I watch Scottie's backswing, right, he's got great control of the golf club. It's very stable. I think a lot of amateurs at home, when they swing the golf club, they can't control the golf club head. They see that mark in their glove down there in their palm where they rip a hole in it and everything. That's that grip moving around. When you see Scottie's takeaway like that, right, what do you key on with your students as a PGA coach in order to keep that club stable, not just in the backswing? We can hold it there, but then when you transition, everyone seems to rip their glove, and how come Scottie doesn't do that?
Yeah, no, for sure. And as we watch Rory McIlroy come onto the range here, one more thing on Scottie is that I think the most important thing is that he has that takeaway, and it's always been the same. It's a little bit club heads outside, hands are in, and he's trying to go up to the top, and then on the downswing, he's using his lower body, not so much his hands and arms, to move the club down. He's clearing that lower body out of the way, and he's making sure that the hands and the arms are squared up at impact, and they're not somewhere else where they don't need to be. So,
all right. I expect a lot of entertainment this afternoon from the 2025 Masters champion, right? He loves this place. I've heard him in podcasts say that this is his favorite golf course in the world. Now, he may change his mind after last April, but as of right now, he absolutely loves this place. He's won here 4 times, right? We're talking about none other than Rory McIlroy. He is in that group at 147 with Xander Schauffele, with Scottie Scheffler. Rory sits at +3 from yesterday, right? We know that cut line could be +1, could be +2. I don't see a lot of wind on these flags. I think it's +2 at the most, right? Rory's got to shoot a nice under par round today to get himself back into this thing. So as he's warming up, right, his mindset today is, I've got to be aggressive, right? Is that a good mindset to have when you're warming up on the range?
Yeah.
Like, talk to me real quickly as he's getting set to go here about how important a game plan is to have before you go into any round, whether it's a weekend morning round with your friends or you're playing in the club championship.
Yeah, one thing I just want to say is that, here at the T5G range, we have the wireless cameras, we have loads of technology, and you can see here that Rory's doing the same thing. He's relying on technology to play his best golf. So I think, again, we go back to like what works best for you. We've seen that when he's aggressive, right? He's trying to go for the green. He's trying to make birdies. He's trying to all gas, no brake sort of mentality, right? If he starts to kind of, I got to be conservative, or I got to take my foot off the gas a little bit, that's when he starts to kind of, play a little bit outside himself. And when you're at a major championship, or like you said, Keith, even for the golfers at home, when you're trying to play your best with your buddies or in any sort of situation you're in, you want to stick to the style of game that works best for you. I'm a little bit more of an aggressive player. I try to go for it a little bit more, but that actually gets me in a lot of trouble sometimes, so I feel for Rory when he's in trouble. But Rory's at his best when he's making a good, repeatable swing and also playing a little bit more aggressive. And so I think if he wants to, play the weekend, which I imagine he's thinking about as well, he's probably going to have to make a few birdies today. But the course and the conditions and the situation lend itself to playing a little bit more aggressive.
Well, before he gets to his next swing, you know what he's watching right there on his iPad? He's watching T-Mobile Champ Connections with your host Keith Stewart, PGA professional, and PGA coach Ryan Adams. Yes, that's the two of us.
Like, Ryan doesn't know what he's talking about.
A little joke here, right? It has to be said, right? But he's wearing Longhorn colors, and he's playing with Scottie today. You think he's trying to play some head games with him? No. Let's get away from that for a second. Now, one of the things that Rory does in his finish, we've talked a lot about following through. We've talked a lot about, how to get to that high finish. Rory, like so many players on this range, when they follow through, that their thighs are together, right? His lower body is still in connection. And so many times amateurs on the range, when I see them at my home club or you see them on the range where you teach, right, you see a lot of leg spread. Right? And when the legs come together like that, folks, that means is that as you're coming down, we see a wonderful shoulder turn with Rory. Yeah. So we've mentioned it time and time again, how that left shoulder gets under the chin in the takeaway. But what you're going to see with Rory is that the trail shoulder, if you're lefty or righty, your trail shoulder has to replace it back under that chin. And the more it goes under the chin, the more the knees come together. So if that trail shoulder comes out high, right, that's going to spread your legs. So watch as Rory does this here. When we get either look, right, you're from the face-on caddy look, you want to watch the left shoulder go underneath the brim of his cap, and then the right shoulder go under the brim of his cap and replace. And then if we get the down the line view like we get here, then you're going to see the result of it. You'll see that right shoulder go under, the trail shoulder go under, right? His neck and his face and everything, and his chin, and you won't see it come out and over. And that keeps him in balance, and it keeps the legs together. That's just something that I like to key on. Is there something that you like to key on as a PGA coach, Ryan, when you start to think about, people that tend to come out and over more, and what I'm talking about here, where it looks like Rory's like he's tossing a horseshoe underhand?
Yeah, I think, the out and over move usually leads to a slice, or if you are going to pull your hands through, you might pull it to the left. Something that you can think about if you're just maybe a quick fix here is like putting your right foot back a little bit, and then thinking about that I'm hitting this shot out to right field or left field. If you're a lefty, the exact opposite, your left foot would be back, but you're trying to do a little bit more of a little bit more of a draw motion, right? So you want to make sure that you're with that back foot a little bit more behind you, that you're going from outside to in. I'm sorry, inside out, and then you're trying to do a little bit more of a draw motion and release those hands through, and that is really kind of what Rory's had his swing for most of his career, right? Is he's done that draw motion, and I think when we watch Rory warm up here, you'll see that motion that you were talking about, Keith, trying to come from the inside out. You know what?
It allows him to play aggressively, right? And Rory has that beautiful inside-out swing. He plays a big draw. It really fits this golf course. And as such, that gives him the confidence today that he needs, right? To be full accelerator this afternoon. And I'm telling you, I know the way these guys compete. Individual athletes are a different breed, right? He knew from Nike he could have worn 100 different shirts. He has on that Texas Longhorn burnt orange because he's coming into this thing today. He knows he's at +3. He knows he's 5 behind Scottie, and that's somebody he knows he needs to beat this week in order to win. He's coming out here extremely focused on attacking the early parts of this golf course, and in order to basically put himself in position, he's not thinking about making the cut at +1, +2. He's thinking about coming out and doing what he did last year on Sunday in the 2024 Wells Fargo, where he just went absolutely nuclear on Xander, who's also one of his playing partners. He is here today, and you can see how deliberate he is in his motion, right? And he's sitting there, maybe he even chose. Right? Maybe even chose where he's standing right now. We have a wide shot here where he's right next to Scottie, right? And I'm sure there's not a lot of small talk going on there. But see, Rory's standing there and he's saying, you know what, Scottie, I bet you can hear the compression of my golf ball behind you, right?
That's
and
right.
Scottie's thinking to himself, you know what, you can hear the compression of my golf ball, you're going to hear it all day. I love the fact that they didn't find separate parts of the range, right? And this is almost like a generational thing in golf. It's a very cool thing. Like back in the day, if this was Tiger and Phil, they'd be on opposite ends of the range. They wouldn't be near one another. These guys are together. They're going to be together all afternoon. They're saying, if I'm going to spend 4 hours with you on the golf course, I'm going to spend an extra hour with you warming up. When you talk about a championship mentality, so many times people treat the important rounds, their tournaments, their members at the club, the people that are viewing this live stream, thankfully brought to us by T-Mobile, and of course this T5G range and all of their technology, their wireless technology here. We're jumping from player to player with these cameras, high resolution, everything. When you talk to your players at home, right? But how do you try to translate that championship mentality, that focus, right? Because I'm not saying that Rory's rude, but I'm also saying that at the same time, he doesn't have to talk to Scottie all day. He can kind of set the tone for himself.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I love about these guys is that they're only focused on themselves and don't feel like that's you're being selfish by doing that when you're out at the tournament or that big moment that you're trying to play well in. When it comes down to it, it's your golf swing and it's your round, right? You don't need to really concern yourself like with if Rory's concerned about Scottie, then Rory's not really worried about himself, right? So he's got to focus on what am I doing today to get up the leaderboard. First of all, make the cut and then get up the leaderboard and try to and make some noise on the weekend. I'm not really too worried about what Scottie's doing, and I bet you Scottie's probably not really worried about what Rory's doing either. So I think that angle that we have of the two of them warming up is just so awesome for golf nuts like Keith and I. But for the two of them, they probably don't even notice each other. So,
are there some common themes there, folks, that you're watching at home? Right, when we see the face-on view and we have a cut where we can see both Scottie and Rory, you see that full finish, you see that complete commitment through the shot. You know, one of the things that we all remark about Rory's golf swing is his balance. It's very difficult to tell whether he's hitting driver or he's hitting 7-iron or he's hitting a pitching wedge, right?
Yes.
And much like Tommy Fleetwood, Tommy Fleetwood almost does it in a way it looks like a drill. Rory makes it look like it's just part of his being, you know, and
yes,
you know, the fabric of his swing and everything. So when you are working with students at home, how do you get them? What are some of the drills or what are some of the key features that you work on with them in order to basically copy someone like Rory McIlroy's balance?
Right. Yeah, I think, you know, balance is a huge part of making a good swing and trying to not sap your power. If you're unbalanced, it's hard for you to make crisp contact and it's hard for you to hit it far and straight. So I think, you know, you saw a swing there from Rory, just insanely balanced. It's like a work of art, you know, every time you watch Rory swing. And he's looking at the numbers there, like how far is that going? But I think, you know, when it comes down to his balance, the most important thing people can take from him is just making sure their weight is centered in the balls of their feet, right in the middle of your feet. You don't want to be too much on your tips of your toes. You don't want to hang back in your heels. You want to feel like you're in a good athletic setup and you're about to, hit a good shot, because if you're, too far up on your toes or on your heels, it's hard for you to make good contact. So you can see Rory, his weight is probably right where that Nike swoosh is. And so I think if we can watch that today and see how he does, then that will be really cool to watch him kind of climb up the leaderboard a little bit.
Another quick key that you can also look for in Rory McIlroy's golf swing is that, we all know that he hits it with a tremendous amount of power, but he doesn't hit it with a lot of power by pulling down on the grip in transition. When you watch him here again, whether we are down the line or we are from face on, what you're going to see from Rory is that you're going to see his left side, his lead side, that lead hip, that lead knee, that lead ankle. You're going to see them all basically accelerate, and that's where he's pulling the club down and the shaft and the grip from. He's pulling it from there. He's not pulling it down with his hands and wrists.
Right.
And that's a really, really important feeling and theme that people should try to mimic when it comes to Rory McIlroy. Oh, here we go.
The champ has arrived.
We had Scottie, we had Rory, right? X gonna give it to you, right? Xander Schauffele, defending champion, Valhalla last year. He is now on the range, about to start his warm-up, and uniquely enough, he's about one stall away from Rory. So we've got three of the best players in the world right here.
Yeah, we planned that, folks. We put in a kind word to say, hey, can you guys stand next to each other, and then just that would be great for this stream.
Well, whether they're standing next to another or not, right? We have T-Mobile wireless technology. We have high-resolution cameras that can bump from player to player to player right here on the T5G range, which is unlike any other. And we saw clips of this before, but the big board that is out there using Top Tracer range, not only do we see the launch monitor stripes, but we also see the information on the best players in the world. Right now they have Rory McIlroy up side by side with Scottie Scheffler. So a shot tracer goes up in one color, and you can see that the gold color relates to Scottie Scheffler and that blue color relates to Rory McIlroy. You can see the colors of their names.
Yep.
And you can follow them here whether you're at home, but thanks to T-Mobile, you can follow it at home thanks to T-Mobile, and you can follow it here. It's a full grandstand behind these guys as the three best players in the world get ready to get after it. And I'm so happy that Xander's here now too.
Yep.
Xander Schauffele. Take me quickly through it. When you think of Xander Schauffele, he's hitting the golf ball, another aggressive player, right? What do you think are some of the keys about Xander Schauffele as he starts to go through his warm-up that people at home could learn from him, and as we're watching him today, could focus on?
Yeah, no, for sure. Xander has always been one of those guys that has a really solid golf swing, and it's very reliable too. And you saw there that he was checking his, I would call it like the quarter waypoint of his golf swing at hip height. He's making sure that club face is not too far whipped inside of his hands, and it's right where it needs to be, a little bit outside, because he's got a pretty neutral grip, he's got a pretty neutral setup, he's got a pretty neutral top of the backswing. So if it starts kind of maybe leaning a little too far to the right or a little bit too far to the left, that's when he might need to take a couple more practice swings and just make sure that before I head out on the golf course and climb up the leaderboard hopefully a little bit, that my takeaway is all good, because if it's not, then we got some issues and I need to solve those quickly before heading to the first tee.
All right, as Xander steps in here, he does a very unique thing, and you'll see this all afternoon in the unbelievable coverage of the 107th PGA Championship when this featured group goes out at 1:47 p.m. But when Xander sets up to it, he resets his grip. And I know we belabored this point, and at the risk of being redundant, I know we belabored this point when we were talking about Scottie, but this is your only connection to the golf club. On every single swing, Xander is methodical in the way that he grips the golf club and he sets his posture, his pelvis, all the angles of his body, the way that he stands. So whether we're looking down the line or we look face on, I want everyone to key on right before he goes to hit it. His pre-shot routine is so deliberate, just like Scottie, the way he takes his grip. You know, Xander right here, we can see him behind Minwoo Lee, and you can absolutely just, it's really cool how, you know, he does that, and he is what? Ranked third in the world?
Right, yeah. No, and you see this little, I would call like maybe a cross alignment aid behind him. You saw him kind of set up there in that last swing, and we'll see if he does it here. No, he's just going to go right into it. But he's checking his fundamentals, and we've talked all range session long about the fundamentals, right? Is making sure that my alignment's good, that my grip's good, and you know, he checked his takeaway a little bit there. So I think it's most important for people at home to realize that, hey, if the best golfers in the world are going right behind their golf ball and checking their alignment, maybe I should do that too, and really focus on to make sure that, you know, you've got those fundamentals down before stepping into the golf ball.
Now these guys are going in less than 20 minutes, and I think this is a key that we should touch upon, and we haven't hit this yet. We didn't hit it yesterday during our T-Mobile Champs Connections, and we haven't gotten there yet today. Over an hour of live streaming coverage brought to you by T-Mobile here on the T5G range, and that is that if you look at the time, right now it's about 1:25.
Yep.
These guys are going in 22 minutes, and we know, like, Xander just showed up, right? When you coach your athletes, your players, Ryan, right, or just for myself, like, I don't need 90 minutes to warm up and hit balls. This is not a practice session. This is a warm-up session. And you can see that these guys, you know, they're hitting a certain number of shots. And I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow we had a camera on them again and they hit the same number of shots, right, for each particular club. Does it surprise you at all that they only take that short amount of time?
Yeah, I think it doesn't really surprise me too much. I think at this point in the week, they're in focused practice mode. That's what I like to call focused practice mode, where if they were coming out here 90 minutes before their tee time in the hot, humid Charlotte conditions that we have today, they would be tired on the first tee. So what they're trying to do is conserve energy. The most important time to be at peak energy is out on the golf course, not on the range next to Scottie and Rory. So the most important thing you can do, you know, and I'm not encouraging you to get to the course 20 minutes before time. That wouldn't be a good PGA of America golf professional if I was saying that.
Well, hang on. Xander didn't get here 20 minutes before his tee time, right?
That's right.
He has been to the physio van. He has eaten.
Yep.
So he's.
That's right. He's basically done his routine. So, and that's what I was going to say next is have your routine. If your routine maybe is a little bit longer of a range session, that's okay. But for these guys, you know, Xander might have only wanted to be at the range for 15, 20 minutes because he maybe didn't have a lot to work on. So he's just trying to get in a flow state pretty much to figure out what he needs to do on the golf course. And that means that, you know, it doesn't mean necessarily that he's, you know, trying to fix something or he's trying to, I don't need to spend much time on the range, but he maybe doesn't feel like he needs to do much. So it's to each player, you know, like Rory's been here a little longer, Scottie's been here a little bit longer than him. So again, swing your swing and do your own routine. Just to wrap up on Xander real quick, our T-Mobile friends have let me know that he was over in the bunker working on things, which makes sense because yesterday, tee to green, he lost strokes. But that includes around the green, approach, and off the tee, right? So he was positive on approach, positive off the tee. It sounds to me like he needed some short game work, so he's doing some situational stuff in order to go out there and make sure that he makes the cut and he can defend all weekend. Now, we're getting back to Rory and Scottie, right? And the one thing about the two of those guys, the one thing about those two guys is that when they follow through, that I want to talk about this because Rory does it from this angle in such a pronounced way. His trail shoulder, not only does it come under his chin, but it finishes closer to the target than his lead shoulder in his follow through. And we'll see it right here. When he comes through, that right shoulder to the left side of your screen is going to power through this swing right under the brim of his hat. And look how much closer his trail shoulder is than his lead shoulder. Twirl there, Keith. Oh, we love. We love to see Rory club twirls. And one of the things, you know, that I love that you brought that up because that angle that you had is like, we've been talking about this all day, and we just saw the perfect ideal shoulder turn, right? Is you want to have that lead, that chin underneath that lead shoulder and that back facing that target, right? That's ideal for a nice turn. Now, Rory's a little bit more of an athlete than Keith and I, but so he might have a little more speed coming down, as you saw there. But another thing you saw is the club shaft there was like pretty much right up against the back of his hat, and I think that's an indication too. We've talked a lot today about the backswing and the turn, but if you're not finishing and getting that club shaft all the way through, and maybe it's touching your hat a little bit, you're in trouble. You need to make sure that you finish your swing as much as you started.
All right, so we're ramping up here with McIlroy. It's hot, it's humid down here at Quail Hollow Club, 107th PGA Championship. We are live from the T5G range. This is T-Mobile Champ Connections. I'm your host, Keith Stewart, PGA professional, alongside PGA coach Ryan Adams. I look over at the screen right now. Rory is, he's humming at about 180 ball speed. He's got to be getting close to that tee time. He's carrying at 326. This afternoon, he's coming for that leaderboard. Yep. It's going to be full send all day. And another guy that, I think about this too. Yesterday, one of the tee times that really caught my attention was that of our Ryder Cup captain, Keegan Bradley. Okay, and he was playing alongside Maverick McNeely and Andrew Novak, two guys that are possible rookies that could be on his Ryder Cup team. So the PGA of America, smartly, intuitively, puts those guys together. Lets Keegan check them out in a major championship pressure, right? And what does Keegan go out and do? Much like Luke Donald, he goes out and he bests them, right? Keegan Bradley's first ever major championship, 2011, down there at Atlanta Athletic Club, he wins the PGA Championship, right? And he's played great to this day because he's an unbelievable ball striker. Now, as we watch Keegan here, right, a little bigger body frame than Rory, but we see a lot of the same things. What are you looking at as Keegan gets going? Yeah,
I think Keegan's probably learned a lot of his fundamentals and a lot of his parts of his swing from his dad, who's a PGA of America golf professional, Mark Bradley. And I think, we haven't really talked a lot about going to see a PGA coach or going to get lessons from PGA coaches, but they can really help your game. Like whether it's from, if you need something quick tweak, club fitting, maybe a little bit more of a swing overhaul, they got your back. So back to Keegan is, I think, one of the things that I love about Keegan's swing is that he takes a little bit of a higher backswing position, but he comes through and he turns through with his lower body nicely to make sure he matches back up at impact. And he's done that move his entire career. And he's got a very neutral grip, as you can see there, and he takes it back. He's trying to get a little bit of a tempo going here with some shorter clubs. But you'll notice out on the golf course or here at the T5G range that that backswing position is a little bit higher. But you know what? As we've said, it's a swing that works for him, and that's all that matters.
Well, we can see it on the screen there, Ryan, is that Keegan's just taller than Rory, right? So taller people, they would benefit from matching their posture. Whether we were talking about Adam Scott's posture yesterday here on the T5G range live stream, right? So it's the same thing with Keegan. If Keegan were to wrap that club around him at the same height of Rory's backswing, it kind of wouldn't fit the structure of his body, right? So if you're looking at this, something quickly you can learn in summary between these two guys that we see in the frame is that your backswing and the height of it should wrap around up by your trail shoulder. It should not be below your trail shoulder, right? Your lead arm, as we look down the line, should try to bisect that trail shoulder. It should not be very much above it, and it certainly shouldn't be below it. And then it will work much better rotating around your spine, and then you won't have to make other manipulations in your body in order to get that club in a position where you could strike it like a Keegan Bradley.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think the thing that you can appreciate by watching this frame right here with Rory blasting out drivers and Keegan maybe just trying to get it into a little bit of a tempo is that all of these different clubs are important in the bag, right? Like you might think, well, I need to practice with my driver the most because that's what goes the furthest, right? I need to be good off the tee, but you see these guys hit all these different sorts of clubs, and it's important for you to work your way through a golf bag, right? You don't want to just focus on hitting the driver for 30 straight shots before you go out and play. You need to work on the wedges, you need to work on the irons, you need to make sure everything is clicking before you get out to the tee.
And here's two guys right here that are in their mid-30s, You know, we commented on this earlier with Luke Donald, right? Look how fluid they move, right? There's a lot of work that goes into play when these guys train in order to become some of the best athletes in the world. And, you know, I'd love to sit down and interview them and say, like, when did your day start today? How much of your warm-up included the physio trucks versus being out here on the range? Because as we spoke to with Xander, he's only going to be out here hitting full shots for maybe 20, 22, 23 minutes.
Yep.
You know, Keegan the same way. Keegan goes this afternoon at 2:09 p.m. You know, right now that's about 30 minutes from now, and he just got out here. He just got started. And Keegan, fantastic day yesterday, right?
Yep.
3 under par.
Yep.
He gains 4.5 strokes, tee to green. Awesome with the driver. Awesome with the putt. With his iron game. And he's no stranger to this place either. He's had 7 starts here at the Quail Hollow Club, and you know, sometimes I think about. It seems like Kerry Haigh has really found his stride when it comes to setting up a PGA Championship, right? And what does it test? It tests the modern golfer for ball speed, for long iron acumen, and for short range scoring, right? And those are things that Keegan can really do. When you look at the way that he's swinging it, right? Right now, right there next to Rory, here he goes. He's going to step right in right now. We've got a good one down the line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I love this view of Keegan right here. And I think it's important to see this. Let's see. Yeah, you can see just a little bit of a higher backswing, but as Keith was saying, it's just because he's a little bit of a taller guy. And he's just trying to figure out where is this ball going today, and what do I need to do to kind of compensate for that. And Keegan's always had a great golf swing. He's a little bit more of a kind of quicker to the trigger, I would say. Just gets right into it, doesn't visualize as much as Jason Day would, but it's important to make sure that you do what works best for you. So.
Well, you know what? Just as Rory McIlroy is heading off to the first tee, Ryan, you and I, we're about to wrap for the day. T-Mobile Champ Connections. My name's Keith Stewart. I'm your PGA host. And you know what? You and I, Ryan, PGA coach Ryan Adams, who's joined me here all afternoon, hey, just like everybody else, we want to leave the range and we want to go watch the best players in the world.
Yep.
So let's go see them. Thanks, T-Mobile, for everything. We'll catch you tomorrow.